Okay, so one of the first things you want to review is the range of pH that you would find an acid in. So we went over pH scale from 0 to 14. So make sure you understand which range would acids fall in. Conversely, which range would bases fall in? Describe the three particles that make up an atom. Again, describe the three particles that make up an atom. Be able to explain the difference between an isotope and an element. The difference between an isotope and an element. Describe how a compound is formed. Differentiate between covalent and ionic bonding. Differentiate between covalent and ionic bonding. Describe the chemical makeup of a solution. Differentiate between solute, solvent, and solution. Make sure you know how many valence electrons does carbon have. And why is carbon so special compared to other elements? List the functions or the jobs of proteins in cells. List the functions or the jobs that proteins play inside of cells. What does an enzyme do? Explain what a radioactive isotope is. So how does a radioactive isotope differ from an isotope? Which atoms make up a molecule of water? How is an ion created? And what is an ion? In section 2, which dealt with the properties of water, make sure you review why ice floats. Why ice is able to float. Know the difference between monosaccharide, polysaccharide, and disaccharide. Monosaccharide, polysaccharide, disaccharide. Differentiate between polar substances and non-polar substances. And so with that, make sure that you can describe the non-polar structure of a lipid by describing, identifying which part is polar, which part is non-polar of a lipid. Describe the non-polar structure of a lipid. And then I said differentiate between polar and non-polar. Name the two types of nucleic acids. That chart that I had you do for homework 2 days ago or yesterday, that was due yesterday, if you did it properly, is going to be very useful for you when you're reviewing. Review the graphs from yesterday's lecture that dealt with endothermic reactions and exothermic reactions. So endothermic, exothermic. Endothermic absorbs more energy than it releases. Exothermic releases more energy than it absorbs, but you need to visually know the difference between those two. Again, it's in yesterday's notes. I think I mentioned describe the structure of an atomic nucleus. Okay, you have stuff on the inside of the nucleus, and then you have things that navigate around. How do you find the atomic number of an atom? How do you find the atomic mass of an atom? Differentiate between cohesion and adhesion. In our notes from the properties of water section, there was a visual example of cohesion and adhesion where there was like a red liquid inside of a test tube, and you saw the meniscus forming. Recall that illustration. You might see something similar. Be able to define activation energy. If I give you a chemical equation similar to the one that we did yesterday in our notes, make sure you are able to identify the products and the reactants. So know which side of the arrow the products are on, which side of the reactants are on. And be able to identify them if you're asked to in a multiple choice format. There are 25 multiple choice. The multiple choice, the information that we just went over, is stuff that you would find in the multiple choice questions. And then there are 3 matching. The 3 matching require that you look at a pH scale, a diagram of a pH scale, and answer 3 questions, match the answers to the diagram. So all the information will be there, you just have to make the proper match. Then there are 4 science skill type questions where you're going to be given a graph or actually a diagram that has elements listed. It gives you the symbol of the element. It gives you the number of protons, neutrons, electrons, and atomic number. And you just have to fill in the blanks. So it might miss the atomic number for one element, but give you the protons of that element. In section 1, the information in the reading discussed how you can determine how many electrons an atom has if you know how many protons it has. Or if you know the amount of neutrons, you should be able to determine how many electrons it has. The only way that that varies is if it's an isotope. Okay, if it's an isotope, they have different numbers, and which is why you're going to review what an isotope is tonight. But if I give you the atomic number, you should be able to figure out some other things. Okay, you should be able to fill in the blanks. So the information is there in the chart. You just got to add in the blanks and answer the questions. You know, how many electrons does nitrogen have based on the information in the chart? Should be real simple. So there are a total of 32 questions.